For years, fans thought The Golden Girls was all about love, laughter, and lifelong friendship. But before her passing, Rue McClanahan revealed something shocking that shattered that sweet image. Behind the pastel walls of Miami and all those late-night cheesecake talks, there was tension so thick it could cut through the laughter. What looked like harmony on screen hid a world of quiet feuds, resentment, and power games that never truly faded.
Messenger came, pulled up at the driveway, came to the door, delivered the script. I took it out of the manila folder. I looked at it, and I said, oh. I looked at it in its, before I opened it. It said The Golden Girls. And there was something about the script, that is, the handwriting, the kind of writing that they chose, not the script that you're reading. And I said, this is going to be a hit.
Rue endured that chaos for years, staying silent while the cameras captured smiles that masked frustration. The audience never knew how bad it really got when the filming lights turned off. Let's dive into the truth Rue hinted at, because what she lived through was far from the sisterhood fans imagined. First up, Rue McClanahan found herself trapped between two silent enemies. While the show looked peaceful on screen, backstage things were icy cold. Cast relationships were distant, strained, and sometimes downright awkward. The biggest clash? Bea Arthur and Betty White, the two powerhouses everyone thought adored each other. Crew members and producers later confirmed that their tension wasn't a one-time thing, it was constant. They barely spoke when the cameras weren't rolling.
I felt this is a winner. I can't wait to read it. So I read it, and I loved the role of Blanche. And I called my agent and told her so. She said they're going to give that to Betty White. And so look at the role of Rose. And I said, but I can't play Rose. I've got to play Blanche. She said, well, you can either be in the series and play Rose, or you can forget it. You're not going to play Blanche, because they just about made up their minds to offer it to Betty White. I thought, well, how smart of them to consider me.
What fans saw as a fun personality contrast on screen was actually a deep personal divide behind it. Bea reportedly couldn't stand what she called Betty's fake niceness and thought her charm toward the audience was just an act. Meanwhile, Betty thrived on that same energy. She loved the fans, the laughs, the warmth, but Bea saw it as too much and too performative. Co-producer Marcia Posner-Williams later spilled that Bea used harsh words about Betty in private, saying the bad blood was real, lasting, and never resolved. And there was Rue, stuck right in the middle, trying to keep the peace while walking on eggshells. Rue had a rare gift. She could talk to both Bea and Betty without setting off another storm. Crew members and producers often said she was the emotional glue holding that fragile set together. She smoothed Bea's sharp edges and comforted Betty whenever the atmosphere turned icy. Rue never made a big scene about it while The Golden Girls was airing, but years later she finally admitted how much the tension drained her. She wasn't basking in friendship and laughter the way fans believed. She was surviving, constantly trying to keep the peace instead of enjoying the sisterhood everyone saw on TV. And the cost? It was huge. By the time Season 7 wrapped up, Bea Arthur decided to walk away from the series. Officially, it was spun as a creative decision, but insiders whispered the real reason. She was simply worn out, emotionally and mentally.
So I went over, read for Rose, and Jay Sandridge said, I'm going to ask you to do something unorthodox. I know you haven't prepared the role of Blanche, but would you mind taking the script down the hall into an empty room and look at it and read it? Oh, I said, if you insist. So I did, and I came back, and of course, he loved what I did. I loved what I did.
Rue later hinted that all the fame in the world couldn't make up for the years of quiet conflict. She held everything together for the sake of the show, yet behind the smiles, she was breaking down inside. The pressure, the constant tension, and the lack of emotional support from both her co-stars and the production left her deeply strained. But here's the twist. What everyone thought was just a feud between Bea and Betty was only the tip of the iceberg. While Rue was playing peacekeeper, she slowly realized something even more painful. Her efforts didn't really matter to those in charge. Even though she was essential to keeping the Golden Girls alive, Rue's voice started to fade where decisions were being made. That truth hit her hard, and everything would explode once the show tried to go on without Bea. Number 2. How producers shut Rue out after Bea's exit. When Bea left, Rue hoped the Golden Palace could grow into something fresh, not just recycle the past. But what happened next stunned her. Instead of being welcomed for her ideas, Rue said she was met with pure dismissal. She came to the producers with passion, pitching the idea of adding a brand new character to restore balance after Bea's exit. To Rue, it wasn't just a suggestion, it was survival for the show's chemistry. But to the producers, it was nothing but a hassle. They shut her down on the spot. The reason they gave her had nothing to do with creativity. It was all about money. They cared more about syndication rights and rerun profits than keeping the story alive. In her memoir, Rue didn't sugarcoat a thing. She revealed that their response, in her words, wasn't worth a flea's belch. That line became legendary, not because of how sharp it sounded, but because of how real it was. That was the moment Rue fully understood that her creative input meant nothing anymore. She wasn't just being ignored, she was being erased from the process. Even though she had been one of the main reasons the Golden Girls worked so perfectly, her insight was treated like it didn't matter at all. Later, Rue explained that the Golden Palace didn't fail because of the cast. It failed because the people behind the scenes refused to grow. They wanted the women to recycle the same jokes, the same beats, without the emotional depth that once made the show special. No new arcs, no real evolution, just repetition dressed up as nostalgia.
2-3 days later, Betty White and I are called in together, and he says, I would like to hear you ladies read together, and Rue, would you read Blanche, and Betty, would you read Rose? And Betty said, Rose? First she'd heard of it. And she said, okay, I haven't looked at it, but I will.
So it wasn't a surprise when the show lasted for only one season. But for Rue, the pain ran deeper than a simple cancellation. It confirmed the fear that had haunted her for years, that her loyalty and dedication to the Golden Girls were never truly appreciated. By the time the Golden Girls became a phenomenon, it wasn't just a show anymore, it was a brand. And brands don't listen, even to the people who built them. That cold rejection from producers opened Rue's eyes for good. It made her look back and realize the warning signs had been there all along. She just didn't want to see them. To really understand why Rue felt so deeply disrespected, we have to rewind to the moment when the Golden Girls almost fell apart before it even began. Number 3. The decision that saved the show but cost Rue her power. One of Rue McClanahan's most surprising confessions before her passing was that the Golden Girls nearly failed at the start, all because the network completely misunderstood her. Originally, Rue was supposed to play Rose Norland, the innocent, wide-eyed woman from Minnesota. Meanwhile, Betty White was cast as Blanche Devereaux, the confident Southern flirt. On paper, it looked perfect. Rue had spent years playing sweet, wholesome roles, while Betty was famous for portraying bold, flirtatious women. But behind the scenes, both actresses hated those boxes they were being shoved into. Rue later admitted that she was terrified that if she played Rose, she'd be forgotten as an artist, typecast forever as the soft, simple character. She wanted to prove she could be daring, sharp, and emotionally deep. Betty, on the other hand, wanted to break away from always being labeled the seductive one. She was craving a role that let her show her softer, warmer side. Together, the two actresses quietly fought back against the casting choice, determined to flip the script. After seeing the auditions, the director finally made the bold call to switch their roles. Rue became Blanche, and Betty became Rose. The result? Pure magic. The show was saved. But for Rue, that victory came with a shadow. It revealed a darker truth about how easily her talent could be misunderstood and how quickly her creative instincts could be dismissed once success took over. In her later interviews, Rue didn't hold back. She admitted that even when actors were right, the system refused to give them credit. Every creative win was labeled as a director's genius, never the result of true teamwork. The message from the top was loud and clear. Actors just perform. let producers make the real decisions. That hierarchy ate at her. Rue once confessed that if she'd been stuck playing Rose every day, she would have ended up emotionally drained and totally disconnected from herself.
Blanche, on the other hand, gave her freedom. That fiery, confident Southern belle let Rue tap into something powerful. She could control her performance, command timing, and bring psychological depth to every line. But even as she helped create one of TV's most unforgettable characters, Rue was being locked out of any real creative power. That contradiction haunted her. The role swap that saved the show also became a painful reminder of what she'd lost. The very success of the Golden Girls rested on her instincts, yet the industry acted like her input didn't matter at all. Rue couldn't ignore it anymore. Blanche Devereaux only existed because she fought for her. But behind the scenes, Rue McClanahan herself was slowly fading, retreating deeper into the character the world adored. That's where the most heartbreaking truth started to show. Number 4. Blanche was a mask she could never escape. One of the most devastating revelations Rue ever shared was that Blanche Devereaux wasn't her true self, not even close. On screen, Blanche radiated fearless sexuality, emotional confidence, and unapologetic charm well into middle age. Fans assumed Rue lived that same way, bold, flirtatious, and unbothered by what anyone thought. But that couldn't have been further from reality. In truth, Rue lived quietly, cautiously, and kept her private life behind locked doors. The woman the world saw as unstoppable was, in her own words, struggling just to stay emotionally afloat. Rue almost never appeared in public with romantic partners, and she refused to talk about her love life at all. While Blanche flaunted affection and flirtation on screen, Rue lived with a quiet storm inside her, crippling anxiety that had followed her since childhood and never let go. In her memoir, she opened up about panic attacks that grew worse as the day faded. She even called sunset the hour of the crash, that haunting moment when fear, loneliness, and insecurity would hit her out of nowhere. These weren't passing phases, they were lifelong battles, and her personal life carried the same fragility. Rue went through multiple failed marriages, some ending in heartbreaking legal fights that drained her emotionally and financially. In one of those divorces, she was forced to give up a huge portion of her Golden Girls' earnings, a devastating blow for someone who had worked so hard to build her name. Even worse, at the very peak of her fame, the media twisted those private struggles into Blanche's storyline, merging Rue's pain with her character's image. The world blurred fact and fiction without her consent, turning her vulnerabilities into entertainment. As the years passed, her physical health began to collapse under the weight of it all. Surgeries, chronic pain, and long-term medications became part of her daily fight just to function. She relied on prescription sedatives to keep her anxiety at bay, but those same pills came with serious risks after decades of use. And the blood-thinning medication meant to protect her heart might have played a tragic role in the brain hemorrhage that led to her fatal stroke in 2010. What makes her story truly heartbreaking isn't just the suffering, but the silence. During the height of the Golden Girls' success, Rue carried all of that pain quietly, never letting the world see the cost behind her smile. None of this was visible to the public. Rue smiled for the cameras, delivered every line perfectly, and kept the illusion alive. Blanche Devereaux became a legend, a symbol of confidence, charm, and fearless freedom. But behind that shining image, Rue McClanahan was slowly fading away. This was the truth she wanted people to finally see before she left this world. Blanche survived the spotlight, but Rue barely survived Blanche, and the price was her peace. Behind the laughter, sass, and unstoppable energy that defined the Golden Girls, Rue carried a quiet pain that few ever noticed. Her success came wrapped in silence, endurance, and heartbreaking personal loss. Every smile hid a story, and every scene carried the weight of what she could never say out loud. So now that you know what really happened, does the show feel different to you?
When you see Blanche, do you see the symbol of freedom the world adored, or the mask Rue had to wear just to make it through each day? Tell us what you think in the comments, and if this story changed how you see the Golden Girls, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who loves classic TV. Stay tuned, because we've got more untold Hollywood truths coming your way that the industry never wanted you to hear.